My husband jokes that I am very rarely seen without a phone in my hand, and so I decided to bring it up here and try an experiment. We're going to take the largest LGBT MBA selfie that I possibly can, but first, so I can give a sense of how this organization has impacted and involved people in this room really since 1998. Let's try a little bit of an experiment here. So if you have been a Reaching Out board member, please stand up. If you've been a Reaching Out conference organizer, please stand up. If you've been an organizer of any of the other conferences that Reaching Out does, so Reaching Out Brazil, Out Women in Business, the Leadership Summit, please stand up. Recipients of the ROMBA Fellowship, please stand up. Anyone who has ever volunteered for the conference, please stand up. If you are a leader of one of the club affiliates, please stand up. And all right, screw it. If you've ever attended the ROMBA conference, please stand up. Unfortunately, I think I have to do this as a pano, so we're going to hold still here while I do a bit of a swipe, so here we go. Thank you. It takes the guy from Apple to beat me here. So I want to talk about, and please keep donating while I talk, but I want to switch over and talk a little bit about the winning. We're doing well. Talk a little bit about the importance of the organization and where we are. We really have spent the last decade or so as a movement winning. It started to feel a little bit like we were invincible, but times have changed. And it's in times where we are tried, where we are pushed, that we become more resilient, that we're able to push back and we're able to grow as a community. So I know that things may not feel as comfortable as they might have even a year ago, but this is the moment of opportunity for us to grow as a community. And so that's something that I hope all of you help us do as a movement, as somebody who's leading an LGBT organization. And to kind of talk about how that can benefit us, I actually am going to go back to 1998. So this is a photo of me from 1998. And I want to provide some context about 1998, actually almost exactly a year, two days off to be exact, what was going on this date. So October 12th, 1998 was the day that Matthew Shepard was murdered. And I personally, at the time, knew I identified as a gay man. I would have been about 16, 17, something like that at the time. And I remember Matthew Shepard was murdered that night. I came into high school science class. There was this professor, Mr. Matthews. And at the time, I'm going to all-boys private school in Memphis, Tennessee, so the Deep South, not necessarily the most accepting place of LGBT individuals. And I go into this classroom, and over the first 15 minutes of the class, the conversation turns to how this faggot, Matthew Shepard, deserved everything he got. And that came out of the mouth of this teacher who was saying that. And that was, for me, it was a horrifying moment. It was almost like a shaming moment. But in retrospect, it kind of became this moment to kind of grow and to learn. And so it's with that over time, I started volunteering for organizations. I served on a couple LGBT boards. I volunteered a lot with LGBT organizations. And over time, got involved with reaching out as a student. So here I am, 2010, not exactly the first time that I was involved, but close enough. You can see that I'm a lot thinner and a lot younger. But that was a moment where it felt like there was a need to give back to the community, and there was an importance, and it felt great, frankly, to be involved with this organization. But that wasn't really the moment that kind of moved me into the role that I'm currently in. That, frankly, came when my mother passed away about 5 years ago. So 2012, 6 years ago. So 2012, my mother passes away. As Kevin alluded to, I'm an only child. My father passed away when I was in my teens. And so all of a sudden, I'm this very unfortunate category that's called adult orphan. And when you get into this category, you start thinking a lot about priorities, like what's important to you. And at the time, it was post-MBA. I was working for a tech startup, and frankly, the tech startup was not really going anywhere. And I knew that. And I wasn't particularly happy, and I wasn't particularly satisfied. And when something like this happens, something that's so earth-shattering and disrupting, it forces you to think about your priorities. It forces you to think about what's important. And this was a real moment for me where I had to self-reflect and say, what do I want to do? How do I want to impact the world? What statement do I want to leave? And it just so happened this was really well aligned with this moment where this organization was going through a plan where we were saying, maybe we want to switch from a volunteer organization to one that's staff-run. And we had these consultants who were working with us on the board. And one of the consultants pulled me aside and she said, Matt, you're really passionate about this organization. I think you should raise your hand and become the executive director. And I said to her, that's completely insane. I would never do that. That's not on my career path whatsoever. Fortunately, a couple days later, a lot of drinking later, and conversations with my husband, I decided that, you know what, this is the time for me to give back. So in 2013, I became our first executive director. And I have to say, working for this organization and working with so many of you has been one of the happiest moments of my life. It really is fulfilling. It's a community that is so supportive, so smart, so energetic, and has so much potential. It's just such an exciting community. So it's been a privilege to really be the executive director here for 5 conferences, 5 years, help move this organization from what was really a conference organization to one that is doing so much now. Never in a million years would I have thought back in 2013 that we would be doing things like having a scholarship fund that at this point with our school partners has given out $6.3 million. That's absolutely insane. And so that just shows you how when you have these moments that you face adversity, where you face bad points in your life, it can push you to do something that is impactful. It can force you to think about your priorities. And during that time, I've also been fortunate enough to marry my husband, Sean. And as James said in his video, you think back to when ROMBA started, that wasn't remotely something that you would think about. And so it's all due to the work of people like James and other LGBT leaders who really advanced that dialogue. The other thing that's going on in my life right now is that my husband and I are going through surrogacy. Knock on some giant piece of wood sometime next summer. What that means is we'll have a child or children, which again, back when James and his cohort created this conference would have just been completely unthinkable. But what that does mean is change. So, at the risk of this turning into the Matt Kidd version of Cher's farewell tour, I will say that this conference will be my last as executive director. I will be stepping down at the end of the academic year, so that's in June, so we have another 8 months together, so don't say goodbye just yet. But it truly has been a privilege. And so as I address you for the last time on the stage, I want to leave with a few asks of you as the community. So ask number one. We saw that clip of Kevin Jennings, who said that 3% of the LGBT community gets involved, gets engaged, whether that's through donating, whether that's through being on a board, whether that's through giving service. The people in this room are most primed to donate, to give their time, to give their services. You are smart, you will do well. Give back to the community because not everyone is as fortunate as you are or will be. So please do that. Here is a photo of a man that I never was fortunate enough to meet. His name is Richard Chicotel. He attended the ROMBA conference in 2011, just once. And he was so moved by the people he met here and so touched that something like this would exist that he actually died of a heart attack. And in his will, he left an amount of money to the organization to allow us to actually do which we now use to do the Leadership Summit. So it's because of people like him who are so moved, who give back. Ask number two, a little bit less of this. Yes, yes, bitch, yes. And a little bit more of this. This is true of the LGBT community overall, but it's particularly true, unfortunately, of our LGBT MBA community. We tend to be a little heavy with the white cis males. And so I encourage you, as you go out, as you engage with the community, reach out to somebody who's not exactly like you. Reach out to the people that you feel like you might not other have a conversation with. Reach out to people that don't look like you. Those voices belong at the table, and you need to let them speak up. Ask number three. Stay strong. We will face times over the next 4 years at least where we as a community will receive a fair amount of pushback. And it's up to us to stay strong, to counter that the best that we can, to be smart and resilient. And so don't give up. It's when we give up that the battle is completely over. This is just one little piece of the game, and we have to get through it. But stay together and stay strong. And fourth and last, stay fabulously fun as you all are. Thank you so much for the privilege of serving you all. I really can't thank you enough. Thank you.